Okay, anyone else is here? Anyone else is on right now? Okay, great, Romina. Hopefully you get to learn some cool things today. Oh, Leonard is here. Yes, so everything was great. Thank you for asking, Leonard. Mother's Day went well. So yeah, my wife. This was her first celebration of Mother's Day, so it was a special day for her. So yeah, it was really great because she was getting messages from everybody saying Happy Mother's Day, and it was really wonderful. Okay, so at least we've got a few people, so I guess we're going to get started, and everyone else is going to jump on the train as we go. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to do is I helped one of us called McNamara to develop an application. I mean, we developed it together basically, so he needed guidance from me, and I wanted to show it today, but I tried to reach out to him to ask him if it was okay for me to show it, and he hasn't responded yet. So I'm not going to be able to show it. But next time, when him and I talk about it, I will definitely show you the app. It's a really cool app that we developed. We did it in just a really short time. I wanted to show you just for you guys to see what you can do with R, and I know R can do some cool things. Okay, the next thing is actually about a question that you asked me, Leonard, about. Remember when we were going over the homework last time? You asked about, what can we do about the NA values? You see, there was an NA value, I think, for the time zone, and you asked what could be done about it. And then I said that there's nothing that we can do about it, and I gave some, solutions like, okay, look at the features of that time zone or of that airport, I think we said, and based on these features, you can go to the internet and look for an airport that has these exact features. So the reason why I said that nothing can really be done with code is because this was the name of a specific place, and you can't really write a code to figure out the name of a specific place. There might be contexts in which this is possible. I'm not thinking of any right now, but this is why I answered it like that. But when it comes to numeric values, if you have time series data, for example, and some of the data in the time series is not available, it is NA, there are many techniques that exist that we can use to kind of predict what the missing values there are. Okay, and it doesn't only work with time series data; it also works with cross-sectional data. It works with so when it comes to numeric values, more often than not, there are techniques to figure out what the NA values are. So the answer that I gave you last time was just because we're looking for the name of a place, and there's really no way we can write code and R is going to magically find out what the name of the place is. So I wanted to say this. The third thing that I want to say is about again, when we were going over the practice questions, we talked about how to convert um, Fahrenheit to Celsius. So I gave you a formula, and then I think it was also suggested that instead of the formula, we can also multiply whatever values in Fahrenheit by, I think, 0.55 or something like that to convert it. Okay. And I try to check it online. I try to check it live actually. And then I agreed. Well, it turns out that you cannot do this. You cannot do it. And I would like to, just spend a second or two to explain why. Let's say 30 degrees Fahrenheit in Celsius, okay, or centigrade. Okay, so you see, 30 Fahrenheit is equivalent to -1 in Celsius. So it would be impossible for you to find this negative value if the only thing that you did was to multiply it by a positive number. Okay, so that formula has to be followed. I mean, you have to implement the formula if you want to go from Celsius to Fahrenheit and from Fahrenheit to Celsius. You have to subtract 32 from the Fahrenheit value and then divide it by 1.8. Okay, this is something that you have to do, because if you follow it, sometimes the positive values will turn into negative, which is what you're looking for. Okay, and sometimes the negative values are also going to turn into positive values, which is what you're looking for. Okay, so last time I figured out that there was a positive relationship, but you can't just multiply it by, I think it was 0.5 something if I remember correctly. So I just wanted to talk about it too. Okay, so having said that, let's get into our project. I always start the stream outside the project, and then I double click on the project icon in RStudio, okay, so that RStudio opens with my project loaded. As you can see, my project flight analysis is loaded here. I do a lot of side work when I'm not teaching you guys, so that's why I have more files than you, because there are a few things that I try to do here and there. Oh yeah, I also need to mention that. How could I have forgotten? Many of the values that I obtained in the homework, when we were going over it last time, are different from what you got, especially with the flights data set. And the reason why there are these differences is simply because, as I said, I do a lot of work when we're not streaming. So I try to, do some manipulation and things like that in order to prepare, some interesting questions or some interesting use cases. So what happened was that I kind of changed the original data, and I was going over the homework with the original data, and not with the data that I was going over the homework with my data, the changed data, and not the original data, which is actually what you have. Okay, it seems that we're having some internet issues again. Okay, it seems that we are back live. Yeah, I'm really hoping that the issues that we had last time, do not come back haunting us today, because we had so many internet issues, and yeah, it was pretty bad. All right, so I was basically saying that the data that I used for my homework was data that I personally changed because I was preparing for some use cases in the future for you. So I wasn't really working with the original flights data. So this is why my results are different from, your results. But so long as you were able to learn from the code and the explanations that I provided, I think that this is the most important thing. Okay. All right. I'll try to be more careful from now on and make sure that I use the same versions of the data as you. All right, guys. Now, yeah, let's learn a few new things today. As always, when we boot, we want to load our packages and import our data. Okay, and we're going to go to the very bottom. I remember asking this question some time ago, guys. How many lines of code do you have right now in your script? I have 363. Okay, so how many do you have? Also, I need to live code. I need to share my live code with you. Whoa, Laura, you have coded more than me. I guess you should start teaching us, Laura. I guess I'm not worthy to be your teacher anymore. All right, I just sent you the live code link. So please go ahead and click on it if you want to have access to the live code. Okay. All right, guys. So today we're going to learn some interesting things. Let's talk about the count function. So this is going to be a new subsection here. Oh, okay. Okay, so linear, okay, I understand. You have 355, but it's still kind of similar. And Romin has 369, okay, interesting. All right, for counting, or let's say for count summaries. Okay, for count summaries. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, whatever the count function can do, okay, you can already do it without using the count function. But you see, the count function is a very, very convenient function that allows you to, let's say, do away with having to use group by and summarize. So the basic thing that you need to understand is, if you ever need to use group by, summarize with the AND function. Remember the AND function for count? Okay. Well, if you ever need to use that, well, don't use that basically, because it's like too much typing if you just use the count function. All right. So I'm going to use some of the questions that I asked in the, you see, the very last homework that I gave, like the homework that I made on the fly. I'm going to use some of these questions or similar questions to illustrate how to use the count function. It's actually very convenient, and you'll see. Okay, so the first one would be how many flights were operated by each carrier? Okay. So when you ask the question how many, okay, well, originally, this is how you would do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. If this is how you want to go about it, that's perfectly fine. Okay. So what you would do is flights, okay. Then you would group by carrier, you know, because each row in the flights data set is a specific flight, right? And the name of the carrier is mentioned on that row. So the number of times that you see the name of a carrier in the data set is the number of flights that that carrier operated, right? So you would group by carrier and you would summarize, okay, and let's just use count or something with the AND function, okay? And then you would have how many flights were operated by each carrier. And I can actually arrange by count in descending order to see the carrier that has had the most flights out of New York City, and that's United Airlines, okay, followed by B6, followed by EV, and followed by Delta and American Airlines, and so on and so forth. This is how you would go about it, and especially in getting a nicely reordered data set, okay. But the count function allows you to do away with all this. So let's do exactly the same thing by using the count function. Okay, so this is how to go about it. So the first component or argument of the function is the name of the data set. So I can put it as the first argument, or I can just use the pipe operator. You do whatever you want, guys. So flights. Now the second argument is, what do you want to count? Okay, what do you want to count? And in this case, we want to count carriers. So we're going to specify the carrier name here. Okay, so let's run it, and we get exactly the same thing, but in less code. Okay, of course, you know, if I had used the pipe operator, maybe I would have had 2 lines, but this is 1 line less than what we did already. And this is actually where you save a little more typing again. You see, it's not sorted, and of course, because this is a data frame, or it's a table if you want, or a data set, I can actually go ahead and pipe it into arrange and rearrange by n, okay? Or there's actually another argument in the count function called sort, okay? Sort. So if I specify sort is equal to true, make sure that true is all capitalized, and it has to change colors like you're seeing here. Then if I do this, lo and behold, I get exactly the same result as if I had used group by and summarize. Okay, so this is actually very neat, okay, because it really, you know, it makes it such that you don't really have to use group by, summarize, and then count inside. So that's really neat, really neat. Okay, now you can see that we haven't really specified any column name. Okay, so by default, the name of the column that contains the counts is called, or is n. That's the name of the column. But if you want to specify a name yourself, there's another name argument, okay? And you can specify what you want in there. So let's say count. Yeah, the function is called count. I'm naming it count. Please, I hope it doesn't confuse you. All right, so now you see that the name of my column is count, okay, like I specified it. If I was using summarize, I would just, use count equals and the function, not, just a letter or something like that. All right, you see, that's pretty cool, guys. So let's try something else. Okay. What is the most popular destination of flights operated by AA out of, let's say out of LaGuardia? Okay. What is the most popular destination of flights operated by AA? Okay, American Airlines out of the LaGuardia Airport. Okay, so now I'm hoping that with all the homework and the practice that you have, I'm hoping that you start to kind of see how you can tackle a question like that. So you would have to filter first because you want the flights out of LaGuardia, right? So the origin needs to be LaGuardia. Number two, the flights need to be operated by American Airlines. So the carrier needs to be American Airlines. So that's the first step, to filter our data. Now, the next step is you want to find out the destinations. Remember, every row is a flight, and you have the dest column, which is the airport of destination. So if you see the name of the same airport several times, okay, this is the number of times that a flight, in this case operated by AA out of LaGuardia, okay, was on the way to that airport. So you want to basically count the number of times these destination or these airport codes show up in the data set. That's what you're trying to do. Now, originally we would group by. Okay, let me do it for one last time. Originally, you would group by dest because that's what you're trying to summarize, and then you would summarize with count and because we want the most popular, we rearrange count. This is how you would do it. So that's ORD. And ORD, is that Detroit? Let me see. RD Airport. Is that Detroit? Oh, Chicago. Sorry. Yeah, Chicago ORD. Yeah, shame on me. I've been there a few times actually. Okay. All right. So that's how you would do it. But of course, when you use the count function, many of these steps are not needed, right? So flights, this time around, I'm going to use the pipe operator count. Now I specify the name of the, column that I'm trying to count, and I want to sort it, name, let me change it, n flights for number of flights, something like that. All right. And when I run this is it. So I get the exact same result here, ORD, followed by Atlanta, then Los Angeles, then Boston, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the count function, guys, look at this and look at that, and we get exactly the same result. Okay. All right. So let's look at a little more advanced use of the count function. Actually, yeah. Okay. All right. Fine. Let's do this. I was thinking about something, but it's fine. Okay. Now let's look at compute the flight count, okay, of each carrier out of each airport. Okay. Yeah, I guess I will have to do it the old way once again, and then do it the new way. We're learning, so let's learn well. Okay. Let's not cut corners here. Let's learn well. All right. So to do that, this is something that you are already able to do. Okay. We want the flight count for each carrier out of each airport, right? So you will need to group by carrier and origin. Okay. So you kind of make combinations of carrier and origin. And after doing that, we summarize, and let's just call it count this time with the n function. Okay, so this is what we obtained. All right, so the 9E carrier, okay, had about 1,268 flights out of Newark. It had 14,651 flights out of JFK. It had 2,541 flights out of LaGuardia, and basically you have the same thing for all carriers. All right, and of course, if I want to arrange from highest count to lowest count, I can do it. But I believe that this here would actually make a little more sense, because you want the data for each carrier kind of grouped together. So here you can see that the AS carrier only flies out of Newark. It doesn't fly out of the other two. Okay, so that's something I can see, and of course you can view the entire data set. As you know, I am prohibited from using the view function because you're going to lose your live code. So you guys may want to do it if you want. Okay, and actually we're going to talk about more group by today and more use cases for group by. So we're going to come back to this very example in a few minutes. All right, let's do it with count. With count, this is how you would do it. Flights, count, okay? So you want to count the number of times each carrier is combined with each origin, and you get exactly the same thing. All right, so yeah, so you see the name is N. If I want to get the same name, okay, call it count there. All right, so I'm going to do that. All right. And maybe I should change it to, since I said N flights here, let me just write N flights here as well. N flights, and then that's it. Okay, so you can actually combine as many variables as you want, and anytime there's a combination on the same row of each occurrence, of the different values in the variable, it's going to count this number of times and then report it to you in this summary table. That's actually very strong. Remember we asked a question that was part of your homework. You had to tell me when you feel that it's cold and not cold, and when you feel that it's windy and not windy, and then find a combination of weather statuses, okay, that are the most frequent, and then you have to group by windy status and cold status, and then count the number of times. This is how you can do it with a count function instead of using group by and summarize. Okay, so this is something that you need to know. Let's do one more example. Even though I believe that you guys already understand, I believe that you know what's happening here, so we don't really need. Okay, let's do one more example. Okay. Okay, what is the most popular destination, okay, in December? Okay. So the people flying out of New York City, where is it that they go the most often, okay, or the most in December? Because that's, end of year and all that, we just want to find out. So flights, of course, we need to filter, right? Because the month has to be December. And once we do that, we're going to group by destination. Oh, sorry, not here. We need to group by destination because we want to count the number of times each destination shows up in the data set when the month is equal to 12. So summarize, count. Okay. Yeah, the most popular. So we need to arrange in descending order. Okay. All right. So that's Atlanta. Okay, that's Atlanta, and this is all airports combined actually. Okay, that's all airports combined. But you can see that LAX is not too far. And in the context of the United States, that difference of 200 flights is actually not very big because there are many flights. Okay, and actually, if you want to find out how many flights there were out of New York City, okay, in 2013, and they are all domestic flights. I hope you've realized since we started, and I think I mentioned it at the very beginning, that these are all domestic flights. In other words, there are flights to places within the United States. So there's no international flight here. So this is the number of domestic flights out of that area, out of that New York City area. That's a lot, guys, right? That's a whole lot. 336,776. So a difference of 200 flights, believe me, is not really big. Even though this is what makes the difference. This is what makes Atlanta the place that people go the most in December. Okay, or that people went the most in December in 2013. Okay, out of New York City. Let's do it with a count function. So that would be flights. Okay, of course we need to filter and then count. Okay, and what we count, of course, is the destination. We want to sort it, and we want the name to be count. Okay, so we get exactly the same thing. Okay. Oh, I was actually supposed to give you another example where you count by two values, and I just gave you another example where you have to count by one value. Okay, let's do that. It's not too much of a problem because we are still practicing, so that's the most important thing here. Let's switch data sets here. Let's look at planes. Okay, we're going to do one more example with planes, and then we'll move on. Okay. Now, before I forget, and I hope that you really got that right, guys. Count is only used if you want to use group by summarize with the n function. In other cases, you can't use count. If you want to calculate an average, if you want to calculate a standard deviation, if you want to calculate any other type of summary besides using the n function, you have to group by and summarize for that. Okay. Now, let's say, let's say, oh yes, this is a very good use case. I wanted to show you another way of using the count function. Now, let's say we want to find, okay, so that's going to be two questions here. How many planes were manufactured? Okay, by each manufacturer. Okay. Or maybe even more use cases. All right, guys. So let's just go straight to count. Okay, how many planes were manufactured by each manufacturer? So each row represents a plane and information about that plane, when it was manufactured, which company manufactured it, how many engines, how many seats, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty good. Okay, so the number of times the manufacturer show up, okay, the number of time it shows up, well, that would be the number of planes that were manufactured by that particular manufacturer. So we can do planes count, and then we're going to count the name of manufacturer, the number of manufacturers. Okay, and we can go ahead and sort it with true, and let's just keep n. Let's just keep n as the new column name. And I felt Boeing. Boeing is one of the biggest. Okay, Airbus is also pretty big. Bombardier, and you have Airbus Industrie, and then you have Airbus. I wonder if maybe these two are kind of related and they need to be summed up, only these two. And you see we have McDowell that shows up a few times here, and so on and so forth. So I really wonder. Okay, so that's how to use the count function in a case like that. Now, what I was talking about is this. Now, this is going to be a little more tricky, even though I'm pretty sure that you guys can use group by and summarize and interesting ways of combining them to find the answer. What if I asked the question? Okay. Let's say for some reason, I don't know in which context this would be used. Okay. Let's assume that you want to find out the number of seats, number of plane seats, okay, that each manufacturer has made, okay, in the entire data set. Let's assume that this is, something that you want to do. So basically what I'm saying is that you have, I'm not really sure how to read this. Is it Embraer or something? So let's assume that, over here, it's not even an assumption. Embraer has made a plane with 55 seats. Then it just made another plane here of 55 seats. So you want to sum up all the seats numbers for each, I wanted to say carrier, but these are not carriers. They manufacture planes. They don't operate flights. Okay. Now, in a case like that, believe it or not, this is actually, the count function can help you for that. Even though you can't really use the n function for this, you will have to use the group by, you have to use the sum function inside summarize for something like that, right? So let's do it. How many seats, for whatever reason, were made by each manufacturer? Okay, some reason, that's what you're interested in. All right, so this is going to have to be done with, okay, let's do group by and summarize. So you have to group by manufacturer, okay? And after grouping by the manufacturer, we're going to summarize, because all the seats values, we want to sum them up, but we want the sum for each manufacturer. That's why we use group by, right? So n seats, or let's say total seats, and that's going to be the sum of seats. And let's just forget about the NA values, okay? And we can arrange. Okay, we can arrange like that in descending order of total seats. Okay, so Boeing has made over 285,000 seats. Okay, that's many planes, guys. Many planes. All right, that they have made, and we already know, we have an idea of how many planes they made. They made about 1,630. Okay, so that's pretty good. So we can actually calculate the average number of seats per plane that they make, to kind of have an idea the size, the average size, of planes made by these guys. Okay, that's an interesting question that we can tackle later. Okay, so that's how you're going to have to do this, right? You're going to have to use group by and summarize with sum inside. So, I said that count is used with n, okay? Count is used instead of using summarize with n, but you can also use count if you're using summarize with sum, okay? And this is how you would do it. Not planes, not flights, planes instead. So count, okay? All right, so the grouping variable, okay, the grouping variable is manufacturer inside the planes data set. So it is still going to be manufacturer here. Okay. Of course, you can't really run this because it's just going to tell you how many planes each of these manufacturers manufactured, okay? It's not going to tell you what is the total number of seats for each of these manufacturers. And this is the reason why you need to add this extra argument, and that's the WT column. So it is weight, okay? So you want this count to be weighted by what column, basically, okay? So whatever column you specify here, the values of that column are going to be summed up for each of these manufacturers. So over there we have seats for this question there. And the other usual suspects. If you want sort true and you want to specify a name, I think I called it total seats. Okay, and that's it, guys. That's it. All right. So this right here allows you to use the count function instead of grouping by and summarizing. Okay, that's very interesting. And we're going to do something similar. If you want to do an average or something like that, you will have to group by and summarize. But for sum and n, you use this. Let's go back to flights. Flights is the biggest data set, so of course you are going to have to. We have a lot more things to do there. Okay, Laura is asking the question: can I sort in ascending rather than descending order with the count function? That's a very good question. Let me actually check it very quickly. Oh, by the way, if you want help on the function, you can write the, a question mark like this followed by the name of the function, okay? And when you run it, the help file is going to show up here. Let me check. I actually have not. So sort is false by default. So it doesn't sort it, like it doesn't sort anything if you don't specify sort. I actually think it's not possible. You will have to add an arrange to it if you want to do it in ascending order. Okay, you will have to count and sum. Okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah, you will have to use arrange if you want it in ascending order. Or maybe there's a way that I'm not aware of, because it seems to me that this would be kind of logical. Like if you want to sort it like this, like in descending order, you may want to be able to do it in ascending order too. Okay, I'll look into it and get back to you, let's say on Slack later. And you're very welcome, Laura. Okay, so I was trying to go back to the flights data set. And what we're going to do for this, I almost use the view function right now, but we have distance. Distance is in miles, okay? And let's say that we want to find out the distance traveled, okay, using all flights from each carrier. So you want to find out the carrier that travels the most, okay? Now, I don't know. I don't know if the company that takes people to Hawaii, if they do many flights, but if they do, they will definitely be on top. But let's check it. Okay. Okay. How many miles were flown? I know flown. I think is with an E, right? Okay, guys. Let's learn some English besides some R. Okay, past participle of the fly verb. I think it's flown like this. Oh, it's flown. Okay, all right. So I was wrong. Okay, flown like this. How many miles were flown? Okay. How many were flown by each carrier? I'm not even sure whether does it sound correct in English. How many miles were flown by each carrier? Well, let's assume that this is correct. Okay. All right. So we can do it with group by and summarize. Let's do it very quickly. Flights. Oh, by the way, if you have a better way to kind of phrase this question, please post it in the chat, and that's what we're going to use in the in the final file. Okay, so flights, group by, and of course we want to group by carrier, okay? And we want to summarize total distance flown if we want, okay? And that will be the sum of distance, okay? So you basically sum up the distance of every flight. And of course we ignore the NA values, and that's what we get. Okay, now let's arrange it. It's a total distance flown. Okay. Okay, so the company taking people to Hawaii. I think that it's there because I think the number of flights are really limited. Okay. I think that's the reason why. Actually, let's check. I think we had a question here. How many flights were operated by each carrier? So if we go back, let's check HA. You see 342 flights in the entire year compared to 58,000. So that's the only reason why. So it makes sense. But man, one of these flights, the distance is insane, and we can actually check it using the data, right? I can do it very quickly here for you. And this is really what data analysis is all about. You have questions, you write code to answer the questions and all that. So this is not one of the questions that was asked, but let's go ahead and find out the distance traveled in miles. When a company takes people from New York City to Honolulu. So we have to filter, and the carrier is called HA. So, and I'm sure that all the flights are to Honolulu. I'm pretty sure that it's HA all the way through, you know, all 342 flights. And I want the distance. This is a function that I'm going to teach you very soon, okay, the select function. So let's check distance. See, guys, almost 5,000 miles. Now, if just like me, you're not really into using miles, but you prefer using kilometers and stuff like that, let's do it. 5,000 miles in kilometers. Okay, so that's 8,000. I mean, this is really long. You know, that's really long. Okay, well, again, that wasn't really part of it. So now let's use the count function. Okay, let me use the pipe all the way through. Okay, how many miles were flown by each carrier? So the grouping variable here is carrier, and the weight is going to be distance, right? And then we can sort, and we can add a name to it, and that name is going to be total distance flown. All right, and we obtain exactly the same result. Okay, so UA has flown, let me read this, 89,705,524 miles. Okay, and these are only flights out of New York City. So we're not even counting flights into New York City and to and from other places in the United States. So that's a lot of miles flown. Actually, last time I taught this, there was a kind of interesting question. Oh, you know what? Actually, I can actually put it as part of the next homework. That's going to be interesting. You know, I'm just going to have you find out the price of 1 liter or 1 gallon or whatever of kerosene, which is the fuel used in airplanes. Okay, and find on average what's the miles per gallon. Okay, the mileage per gallon of airplanes, and use this, you know, to kind of estimate how much money was spent by each of these carriers, you know, in kerosene. Okay, so these are the things that you do in data analysis. And in a case like that, you see, we're going to have to rely on data which is actually outside the data sets that we have. Okay, we rely on external data to find the answers that we are looking for. So you would be able to see how much was invested by each company in kerosene. And of course, we're going to get something that is not exactly true, because back in 2013, a gallon of kerosene was not the same as the values that you get. That you'll get now. And if you can actually get values from 2013, that would be great. Now, another issue is the value changes over time. So you may actually want to be able to find some sort of time series of daily kerosene data in 2013. If you can do that, then you can actually, you know, find out what the price is every single day, and then compute how much it costs these different companies each day. Okay, and once you find it for each day, you can now summarize and sum or count using weight to find out how much they spent. This is actually interesting because it's something that we can do. You will need to learn how to merge data. This is actually coming up. Today is Tuesday, right? I think we're going to learn how to merge data next week. But yeah, these are things that you can do with the things that you already know. Okay, so how many miles were flown by each carrier? And yeah, that's how you would do it using the count function. Okay, so the count function is extremely important, guys. Okay, so in the time that we have left, let's go back to group by, and let's look at some things that you really need to know about group by. And if you don't, you know, take these into consideration, you may actually get some results that you don't want. So let's talk about the ungroup function today. For ungrouping, okay, variables. Okay, so we talked about the group by function. Okay, now we're going to talk about the ungroup function. So in parentheses here, I'm going to write opposite of group by. Okay, opposite of group by. Okay, now there's one question that I said I was going to go back to. Now I can't remember. I should have written something there as a comment so I could get back to it. Yes, I think. No. I think it was something with the carriers. Let's see. I think it was something with the carriers. Yes, that was it right here. Okay, that was this. Compute the flight count of each carrier out of each airport. Alright, so I'm going to do the flight count for each carrier first. Oh no. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it for each carrier out of each airport. Okay, that's what I'm going to use to exemplify what I want to show you. Okay. Alright, so let me copy and paste it. I'm just going to copy and paste this code with compute the flight count of each carrier out of each airport. Okay. Now, before going on, I'm going to run the code all the way to group by only. Okay. So we know how the flights dataset looks like, but when I run it with the group by, I think I showed it to you, right? It actually adds a line here on top of the data set telling you how many combinations of the groups we have. So in this case, we have, so basically there are 35 different combinations of carrier and origin. This is what this is telling you. Okay, there are 35 different combinations of carrier and origin. All right, and they appear several times in the data set. Okay, this is why at the end of the day, the final data set has 35 rows, because there's one row for each possible combination that was found in the data set. Okay. All right. Now, let's assume that I want to continue. Now, one thing that I want you to realize is after doing this this summary, okay, we still have a grouped variable in the resulting data set. And it used to be grouped by carrier and origin, but because we used a summary, it dropped one of the grouped variables. So now we have grouped by carrier. Okay. Now, if you don't remember what I just said, it's not really a problem. But the most important thing there is you have information about the variable which is grouped. And it's important that you notice that, because if you don't, it might actually get you into trouble. Now, let's actually go one step further. Let's assume that we want to find out the percentage, we want to calculate percentages. So we know the flight count of each carrier out of each airport, okay? But we want to find out what percentages we can maybe calculate for this. So because we want to create a new column that has percentages, we'll have to use mutate because we are adding new data. So let's add mutate and PCT flights, okay, and actually to be let's say consistent, let's just rename the first one that has the count. Let's rename it as n flights for number of flights, and then percentage of flights. And this percent flight is equal to these values here, n flights, divided by the sum of all the values. Divided by the sum of all the values. Okay, sum of n flights. So this is an example in which we're using sum inside mutate. This is done. If you use sum inside mutate, it's just going to sum everything. Okay, and you're going to get an error actually. The reason why I don't have any error here is because I am dividing everything here by the sum of everything. Okay, that's why I'm not getting an error. But if you just use sum in one column like this, it's going to create a problem. Okay. All right. Yeah, some of you like this to be multiplied by 100. So let's multiply by 100 at the beginning so that we won't have to, add parentheses and stuff like that. Okay, so that's it. Now, there is a problem, guys. If you sum everything up, it's definitely bigger than 100%. Actually, one of the values here is 100%. Okay, so what just happened? I'm going to explain it to you. Let me go back to what I said earlier. I want you to realize once again that the data is still grouped, and it is grouped by carriers. So every type of operation that you are going to do on the data is going to be done for each group and each group only. It's not going to be done for the entire data set. So it depends on what you're looking for. Now, because right now it is grouped by carrier, so when I divide the number of flights by the sum of the number of flights, this operation here, sum, is done for each carrier only. So basically over here, it's just going to divide the values that you see here by the sum of this specific carrier only. Then it will move to the next one. These three values here is going to divide each of the values by the sum of all these values only, and so on and so forth. So it is grouped by the carrier. So everything that you do is going to be grouped as well. Okay. So when I run my entire code now with the percent flight, what I need to understand is that this is what this value here means. It means that out of all the flights operated by 9E, only 6.87% of these flights were out of Newark. And the flights operated by 9E, okay, that were out of JFK, okay, were the most with a percentage of 79.4%, and the flights operated by 9E out of LaGuardia were, amounted to 13.8% of all flights operated by that group, 9E. Okay, I hope it makes sense, guys. Okay, I hope it makes sense. So it's very important to understand that, because someone may just come and say, okay, maybe I want to have the overall percentages. In other words, all the flights operated by 9E out of Newark, what percentage do they represent out of all flights out of New York City area? Okay, if that's what you're looking for, it is possible to do that, but then you need to ungroup first, because so long as this is grouped, you are not going to be able to get the overall percentage, or the percentage, as a function of all flights out of all airports, out of all carriers as well. Okay, so that's not going to work. Okay, all right, so we need to and I really hope that this makes sense. Let's change this. Let's just change it. We're going to add things to it. Computer flight count and percentage of each carrier out of each airport. Okay, so this kind of makes sense, okay, because you're doing count and percentage for each carrier, right? It makes sense. Let's do something similar. Now, it's different. What we want to do now is going to be slightly different. Okay. What we're going to do is, out of all the flights, when looking at all the flights out of a particular airport, okay, you want to know the percentage of the flights operated by each carrier. So it's slightly different. The first one is, out of all the flights operated by a carrier, you want to know the flights that were out of each of the three airports. Now we are looking at airport as the big, let's say, umbrella. And for in each airport, what is the percentage of all the flights operated by each of the carriers? Again, I'm really hoping that it makes sense. Okay. Compute the flight count and percentage of each. Okay. Yes. So, yes, indeed. So they add up to 100. And the reason why you have 100.07, Leonard, is simply because the values that you see there are rounded up, okay? And I think you kind of used the rounded up values. But yes, it's really good that you talk about this. But guys, be assured that even though you see 13.8 here, under the hood, it's not necessarily 13.8. But just for the sake of displaying the data, the program here is kind of rounding it up for you. And this is usually done inside tables, okay? But in truth, they all add up to 100. It's actually a good point. Let's actually let me show you that that's the case. I'm going to save this into a variable. Let's call this carrier origin. So for each carrier out of each origin, okay, carrier origin okay, let me just say carrier origin like this, and the other one is going to be origin then for each carrier out of each origin. Okay, so we want to sum up, the data for each carrier, right? So it is still grouped by carrier, so we don't need to group by it again. So carrier origin, and I'm going to add a comment right next to it. Oh, let me add the pipe operator first. Okay, already grouped by carrier. Okay, now let me go down, and I can summarize straight. Again, I don't need to group by because it's already grouped, right? So I don't need to group by. Total percent, and we need to sum the percent flight. So because it is already grouped by each carrier, it's going to sum up the values, the percent flight values for each of the carriers. So we should be able to see 100 for each of the carriers. If we don't see it, then it means that there's a problem. Let's run it. Lo and behold, for each of the carriers, when the percentages are summed up, we get 100. So thank you very much, Leonard, for posting this comment, because it kind of allowed us to do this right here. Okay, so again, I'm trying to do the opposite now. Compute the flight count and percentage of for each airport. Compute the flight and count, flight count and percentage. Okay, compute the count, I should say, and percentage of all flights out of each airport. Okay, are operated by each carrier. All right, so origin is the big group now. Okay. All right, so now before I put it in a variable or anything like that, let's just code and then we're going to put it in a variable. So now what we want to do is we want to group by origin first and then carrier second. Okay, origin first and carrier second. The reason why we do this is because after the summary, we want the first grouping variable to remain. Okay. You will understand what I mean in a second. So if I summarize n flights, okay, and then n like this, okay. So after summarizing, oh, what am I doing? I'm sorry. N flights equals n, not comma n. N flights equal n. Okay, so now you see that it is the carrier grouping has been dropped, but this one remains. Okay, so we want it for each origin. So that's what we set out to do. So for each origin, what percentage of flights does each carrier represents, basically? Okay. Okay, so mutate. All right, let me just copy and paste this because it's the same code, really. Okay, so when I run this, you can see that, the values are much smaller because out of each airport, there are many carriers that operate flights out of each of these airports, right? So because the group is origin, then the way to interpret this is, okay, out of all flights, okay, or looking at the flights from EWR, Newark, okay, all flights operated by 9E represent 1.05%, okay, of all flights departing from Newark, okay, and of course there are many more, but when you scroll down and on your computer you can view it if you want to see the other values there, this is really important. Again, when it is grouped like that, okay, you have to pay attention. Actually, I said that, when you use mutate, now we're using, group by and mutate, basically. Okay, of course, there's a summary there, but we're using mutate as well. So this is a use case, but it's not only for, mutate, but it also works with arrange. Okay. So over here, and I'm actually going to go back to this. Compute the flight count and percentage of each carrier out of each airport. Okay, I'm going to go back to this. So if you try to arrange, okay, everything by n flights or or percent flight is the same, right? Let's try it and then you'll see what I mean. We're going to do it for carrier origin. Carrier origin. Arrange in descending order. You know, n flights or percent flight is going to be the same. It's not arrange. It's arrange. Okay. So see, there's a problem somewhere because you have 78, then 81, okay, then 77. So what's happening here, right? It doesn't really make sense. Okay, it doesn't really make sense because you have a value, a bigger value than a smaller value again. It's kind of weird like that, right? It's kind of weird like that. So basically, this is just to tell you that this rearranging that was done was by carrier, okay, by carrier. Now I'm not sure. Okay, so I think I didn't use a good data set to kind of exemplify this. Oh, okay, it is still okay. I am actually getting, yeah, I mean the results that I'm seeing here. Oh yeah, yeah, it makes sense, and okay, it makes sense. I'm going to explain this to you in a second, but let me just talk about what I wanted to talk about here. So you see, this is not going to give you the result that you want, and that's the main point. But again, there's something else that I want to say about this later. But I want you to see that the fact that it is grouped is really not helping you at all. Actually, if you want to group by, each carrier. And for each carrier, you want to group by, n flights or percent flight. The arrange function already does that for you. It's been a while since we learned about the arrange function, but I hope you remember that you can arrange by several columns. So if you specify carrier first, then flight in descending order, then it's going to rearrange each carrier, and for each carrier, it's going to rearrange the data. Then move to the next carrier, then rearrange the data. Then move to the next carrier, then rearrange the data. And so on and so forth. And you'll see it in a second. So you see, for 9E, the data has been arranged from highest to lowest, right? Then for AAA, the data is rearranged from highest to lowest. Now, AS seems to have only one airport of origin, B6, highest to lowest, and so on and so forth. So you have to be, you have to know these things. Okay. So yeah, there are a few things. So I showed you group by and arrange. You don't necessarily get what you're looking for. Group by and mutate. You have to be careful. Now let's ungroup, because that's really the function that we are here to learn, and that's the last function that we're going to talk about today. So if you're trying to find, percentages for everything, overall percentages, then it might help to ungroup. Or if you want to group by something else, you can ungroup and then group by whatever you want to group by later. It's actually very possible to do that. So compute the flight count and percentage of each carrier out of each airport. Okay. Now, let's say compute count and overall percentages of flights operated by each carrier. Okay. So the first thing you need is to compute the number of flights operated by each carrier. That's the first thing you need. Okay. For this one, you can use count. Okay. But just because I'm teaching you on group, I am going to group by. Now that's a nice thing with count too. Count will group by and summarize for you using n or sum, but the resulting data set is not going to be a grouped data set. Okay. And if you want to group it later, you can do it, but count will not do anything like that for you. Okay. But again, grouping may be something that you want for the kind of things that you want to do. So it's really up to you. So group by carrier, and we're going to summarize. Let's just call it n this time. Okay. All right. So these are the carriers and all the flights. Okay. And now, because Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually need. Yeah, let me just, okay. Compute count and overall percentages of flights operated by each carrier out of each airport. Okay, because we still need a grouping variable so that you can see, you know, how ungroup is being used. So right now we have this. Okay, so this is for each carrier. Basically, what you have is, ooh, it doesn't like what I just did. It should work. Yes. For each carrier, this is the number of flights out of this origin. For this carrier, this is the number of flights out of this origin, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we already talked about it. And we already showed that it is still grouped by carrier. But if I ungroup, if I use the ungroup function, okay, I get the same data, but there is no grouping variable anymore. Okay, there's no longer any grouping variable. And that's exactly what we want, right? We don't want any grouping variable if you want overall percentages. These counts are not overall counts per se, because they are counts for each airport, okay? Because on one line here you have the count of flights of each carrier out of each airport, okay? But after ungrouping, we can find the overall percentages. So I can once again copy and paste this last line of code, and when I run it, my code is still syncing. Okay, I called it n here instead of n flights. So let me just change it to n flights. All right. So now, ladies and gentlemen, if you sum up all these values all the way down to the 35th value, okay, they will all sum up to 100. Okay, they will all sum up to 100. And the reason why is because we ungroup now. Okay. Okay, so this is a use case for the ungroup function, which is really important. Now, I don't usually teach this, but in my own experience, I have run into many issues because I did not ungroup my data. Okay, so I was getting values that I thought were correct, but were not. And after doing so much work, I then realized that everything that I was doing was basically wrong, and I had to go back. Okay, so guys, please, whenever you're trying to do any grouped summary, think about it. Do I want it on the groups, or do I want it for everything? If you want it for everything, make sure that nothing is grouped in your data, because if it is, it's going to give you some trouble. Okay, so there's, okay, and again, I just want you to see here that I'm just going to add this here. Let's summarize, and we're going to sum up everything in percent flight. So total percent is equal to sum of percent flight na.rm equals true. Okay, so this is just to sum up all the values in the percent flights, and you see that it's exactly equal to 100, right? Okay, so you may want to remove this. I just showed it to you, just for you guys to see what it looks like. That indeed we are, we're getting what we're looking for. Okay, because we set overall percentages. Okay, and I didn't say anything about. I'm pretty sure that you guys understand, but this is how you would interpret. Okay, all the flights operated by 9E out of Newark represent 0.37% of all flights operated by all airports, out of all operated by all carriers out of all airports. Okay, 0.37%, and so on and so forth. And you may want to arrange it. If you want to see the carrier that has the biggest share of flights out of all airports and all carriers. Okay, it's called percent flights in descending order. Okay, you may want to do it, and that's of course UA. Okay, a UA out of the flights of UA out of Newark represent the biggest share of flights for each carrier based on the flights operated in each airport. Okay, that's how you would interpret it. So guys, here are the tools that you have. It is now up to you, to use your data based on what you want to achieve. Use these tools, to achieve what you want to achieve. So it's weird that this section is about the ungroup function, but we use ungroup only once. It might seem weird, but everything before that was to explain the impact that group by can have on data, okay, and then use the ungroup function to kind of disentangle our data from the influence of group by, if that's what you want to do. So let's use ungroup one more time with this example here. The first one was about flight count, or flight and percentage of all flights out of each airport operated by each carrier, right? So that's where the origin was the big variable, okay, and the carriers were the smaller variable. So after running this code here, we see that our group, okay, is still there, origin, okay. Now if we want to add code for computing the percentage for each flight, is it what I'm looking for? Okay, so we obtained this, okay, and because of how you coded it, and you can see with this muted, oh, I'm sorry, I already did that. I don't need to do it again. What I wanted to do was to ungroup, actually, because that's exactly what we have here. Oh yeah, I actually added another mutate again. It's not a problem. But you see, carrier, origin. Now because I just use ungroup here, guys. I'm sorry. I think I'm actually getting confused in my code here. Let me see. Is this what I'm looking for? Yes, that's what I'm looking for right here. Okay, so all right, so 9E flights represent 1.05% of all flights out of Newark. Okay, because it is still grouped by origin. So these percentages are for each origin specifically. Okay, so we know now if we want the overall, percentages. What we'll need to do is to ungroup, right? And I think I need to copy and paste this and add a new comment. Yes, that's what I need to do. So compute the flight and percentage of all flights out of each airport operated by each carrier. Where can I put the word overall? Okay. Flight and overall percentage. Okay, I guess this would work. And before mutating, okay, the only thing I need to do is before mutating, I just need to ungroup. Okay, so that the data is not grouped by origin anymore. Okay, so you see that now it's actually very different, and we can go ahead and arrange. Okay, descending order of percent flights, really doesn't matter. Okay. So now we have new interpretations. Okay, this is where we're going to end our live stream today, and I'm going to let you guys know, give you an announcement, I guess, which I actually talked about a little bit earlier. Not today, but in a previous live stream. Okay, so this is the interpretation. Okay, the flights, okay, out of Newark, operated by UA, okay, represent 13.7% of all flights out of all airports and operated by all carriers. Actually, let me show you. So we just run this with 13.7% at the top, and when we run the previous code here, we get exactly the same thing. Okay, so these two codes are equivalent just because we, if we hadn't ungrouped, then the grouping, one was grouped by carrier, the other one was grouped by origin, the grouping would have changed the result. But because we ungrouped, we ended up getting the exact same result, right? So, and I believe that you can already see that the only difference is this was grouped by carrier and then origin second. This was grouped by origin and then carrier second, right? But after ungrouping, you basically get the exact same final data set. And then that's basically what you do. And you see the summary was the same, we just calculated counts. So the combinations, whether you're looking at origin first, carrier second, or carrier first, origin second, the number of combinations is the same if you're counting. Okay, so that's basically it. But that's what I'm trying to do, guys. I really want you guys to understand things. We are learning a language. You see, I really do not like it when people. Not that it irritates me or anything like that. That's not what I mean. But if you are learning a language, okay, go ahead and learn the language, learn the grammar, learn the structure of the language, and try as much as you can to be able to speak that language, right? But many people, unfortunately, are just looking for codes, that do this, code that do that, and then they just keep it and then they apply, But even if you have code, it's important that you study it so that you will be able to, let's say, modify the code to what you're trying to do later. And this is what speaking a language means. Okay, so that's basically that. I usually say that if you go to a country where the language spoken there is not your language, okay, if you want to be very efficient, you're not going to have a list of many different sentences that you might say. Like, how do you say I'm hungry? How do I say take me to this place or take me to that place? And then you have a long list of several statements. That's not really the most efficient way of doing things. The best way to do things is to sit down, learn the language, and when you can actually form your own sentences, you will then be able to communicate with people. All right, guys, so this is the announcement that I was going to make, and this is where we're going to end. Last time I announced a giveaway, so I will need the people who are interested in the giveaway to let me know about it. As you know, in data analysis, especially in when you code, I'm not talking about using software for point and click like SPSS and things like that. When you code, you type a lot. And I know that many of you are not really able or did not learn how to type fast. And this is actually called touch typing. Okay, so I announced a few streams ago that I was going to give away a paid software to help some of you guys learn how to touch type. Okay, so that's the first giveaway, and hopefully we're going to get more. Now, this one is going to be international because it's just code that I'm going to send you, and the code is going to allow you to unlock a software which is called Mavis Beacon. Okay, Mavis Beacon. All right, it is a very well-known software used by many people. They have many products actually, and they don't do typing only. They do a few other things actually. Product catalog. They do a whole lot of other things. Print shop, family tree, whatever this is, okay. But it's the touch typing part that I would like to give away. So I have about 3 codes, if you are interested, okay, in getting one of these codes and you're not really good at touch typing and you want to learn, please let me know. Send me a Slack message, and then if there are more than 3 of you who know that you want to learn and you can't do that already, we're just going to let R decide, okay? And it's going to be completely anonymous anyway, so that's why I'm asking you to send it to me. Send me a private message on Slack, and then you guys will be able to get it. All right, so this was the announcement that I said I was going to give to you. All right, guys, so this is what I have for you. Unfortunately, the homework is not ready. And actually, that homework I kind of anticipated because I'm using things that we're going to learn next. Actually, things that we're going to learn not next only, actually more things that we're going to learn. So the next homework is basically going to be packed. Today, we only learned about the count function and ungroup. So one homework, if you want, okay, you can go back to the previous 2 homework, and wherever you use group by and the end function or group by and the sum function, the homework would then be to to rewrite these codes using the count function instead. Okay, this would be a very good way to practice what we learned today, I believe. Guys, this is what I had for you today. Do you have any questions for me? And I'm glad that the internet, wasn't as bad as last time. We had a problem at the very beginning, but everything, got back to normal. So that's really great. So if you have any questions, please let us know in the chat. If everything worked for you too, please let us know in the chat as well. And then we'll say goodbye. Okay. Hey, Laura, really, really glad that you were able to make it to the live stream today. I mean, you were the first person to respond that the stream was down. And I was like, oh, okay, Laura is with us today. Thank you very much for joining. Kinley, you here. Kinley's always the stealthy guy. You never know when he's here and stuff like that. Kinley, really, really glad that you were able to join us today. Romina, you're very welcome. And I hope that you guys were able to learn something new today, and I hope that you guys can feel, that the skills are actually increasing in the R language and the kind of things that you can do. I hope that you can really, really feel it. Okay, Leonard, that's really wonderful. And Leonard, I'm really glad that you enjoyed the small article that I wrote for you. I actually sent it right after writing it, so it has some typos and stuff like that, but I just wanted to make sure that, the issue that you had was cleared up. The two methods are really the same, okay? But I like the method that I use because it allows you to go through more steps than what they use in R for data science. So I have you guys calculate the departure delay. I have you guys calculate the arrival delay. Then I also have you guys calculate the scheduled airtime. And then I have you guys calculate the airtime made up. So this is a lot more practice, and it allows you to be more familiar with the different functions and all that. So I just wanted to make sure that this was clear. So I decided, hey, let me just write something with all the equations and all that you would take time and read and try to understand. So you are very welcome, Leonard. All right, so I guess that's pretty much it. Guys, it's always a pleasure. Let's continue next time on Saturday, and we'll continue then. Until then, take care and God bless.